My family backed my cheating wife and brother when they had an affair. Now they want me to be the bigger man and help them financially. I'm 33. I run my own business now, something I built from scratch after everything fell apart. But this story isn't about success. It's about what people do when you stop being useful, or worse, when they think you're too proud to matter. 3 years ago, I came home to a half-packed suitcase, a cold dinner on the table, and my wife sitting at the edge of the couch with her hands folded like she was waiting to be sentenced. She didn't cry, didn't fight, just said, "It's your brother." I didn't mean for it to happen. We didn't plan it. And just like that, the world I spent 10 years building turned into an empty room. We were married 7 years. No kids. We were trying. We had a house we both paid for. A dog I still miss. Family dinners every Sunday with my parents, my younger brother, and his on-again, off-again string of girlfriends. I thought we were solid, not perfect, but steady. She laughed at my jokes. I paid attention to her monologues about Pinterest and dream bathrooms. We argued, sure, but I never thought this was an option, especially not with him. My brother, 5 years younger, charming in a slippery way, the kind of guy who lives just far enough beyond the line to not get caught. He'd borrowed money from me more times than I could count, wrecked a car I co-signed on, missed our father's surgery because he was working through stuff. I never stopped helping him, because that's what brothers do, right? When I confronted him, he didn't deny it, didn't apologize either, just shrugged and said, "It just happened. Don't make it a thing." My parents? They didn't yell, didn't disown him, didn't comfort me. They said things like, "You two need to talk it out. This family's been through enough already. You're older. Be the bigger man." That was the line that did it for me. Be the bigger man. The phrase people use when they don't want to hold the smaller man accountable. I moved out that week, filed for divorce the next. No one came with me, no one offered a couch, no one checked in. My mother stopped calling. My father said I was handling it all very dramatically. And my brother, he moved into our house with her less than a month later. I heard about it through a mutual friend, not from them, because they never looked back. After I left, things got quiet. Not peaceful, just silent. And silence can rot you from the inside if you let it. I rented a 1-bedroom apartment on the edge of town, nothing fancy. Water heater hissed like a snake and the neighbors smoked inside, but it gave me space, and space was all I had left. No one from my family called to check in, not to ask how I was doing, not to ask how the divorce went, not even to ask if I'd kept the dog. She took him, by the way. They just accepted the new version of the story, where I was overreacting, where it was messy but not unforgivable, where I was supposed to just eat the betrayal and come back to Sunday dinner with a forced smile. But I didn't. I stayed gone. I focused on work, left my job and went freelance, design and branding. Long hours, unstable income, but no one else to answer to. I learned quick, adapted faster. 2 years later, I was hiring contractors of my own. It wasn't revenge, it was survival. When you have no one backing you up, you learn to build alone. And I did. The call started again earlier this year, not from my brother, not from her, from my parents. I didn't pick up at first. I thought maybe it was a health scare, a guilt trip, an invitation to some wedding I'd never attend. It wasn't. It was a request. My brother had been laid off. His wife was on maternity leave. They were struggling to stay afloat. Apparently, my mother had heard I was doing well, that I had resources, that I was in a position to help, and they wanted me to be the bigger man. I didn't raise my voice, didn't list all the things they chose to ignore, didn't even mention the house I left behind that now had my brother's car in the driveway and her bike chained to the porch. I just said, "Help with what exactly?" My father took the phone, said they weren't asking for a handout, just some support to help the family get back on their feet. Said it would mean a lot to all of us, as if I was still part of that us. I asked him if he remembered what he said when I moved out. He paused, then said, "You made that choice, son. We didn't push you away." Number. They just stood behind the ones who did. I ended the call the way I wish I'd ended the marriage, not with a fight, but with clarity. I'm not angry, but I'm not coming back. Not now. Not ever. They haven't called since. After the call, I expected them to back off, but I should have known better. When people can't guilt you directly, they find others to do it for them. It started with a message from my cousin, someone I hadn't spoken to since before the divorce. "Hey, not trying to get in the middle of anything, but I heard your brother's really going through it. Might be nice if you reached out." No context, no acknowledgement, just a gentle shove toward the fire that once burned me down. Then came a tag on Facebook, a photo of the new family, smiling with their newborn at a park I used to walk through every weekend. Caption read, "So proud of my strong baby brother and everything he's overcoming. Love wins." Strong. Overcoming. No one tagged me, of course, but I felt the undertone loud and clear. He moved on. Why can't you? Then came the church people. My parents are active in a local congregation, the kind where community and forgiveness are always trending. A woman I barely knew from potlucks and funerals messaged me. "Your mom says she prays for healing in the family every day. Maybe it's time to be the bridge." The bridge? Funny word. Because a bridge is something people walk across, usually without asking what it took to build it or who's holding the weight. So I wrote something, not a rant, not an attack, just a letter. One message, sent only once, shared with the few who kept dragging me into this ghost of a family. If you think I'm bitter, I understand. If you think I'm selfish, I accept that. But before you decide I'm the villain, read this once. I didn't leave because I couldn't handle pain. I left because no one else acknowledged it existed. I didn't ask anyone to choose sides. But when my wife and brother chose each other, you stood behind them. Quietly, passively, but fully. And now that I've built a life without you, I don't feel vindicated. I feel tired. Tired of pretending we're still something we haven't been in years. You want healing? Start by admitting who hurt who. And then maybe, I'll believe you want peace. Until then, stop using forgiveness as a weapon. It's not my responsibility to make betrayal more comfortable for everyone else. And some didn't reply. Some blocked me. But one, my aunt, sent back the most honest message I've seen from anyone in that family. "We never thought he'd actually get caught. We just didn't know what to do when you didn't stay quiet." That told me everything I needed to know. They weren't confused. They were complicit. It was a Thursday. I remember because I'd just closed a major client deal. Biggest one since I launched my agency. I took myself out for dinner. Nothing fancy, just a quiet spot downtown I liked for the lighting and the lack of small talk. Halfway through my meal, I heard a familiar voice. Not loud, not emotional. Just a passing, "Yeah, I'll grab a table for two." I didn't need to turn around. You recognize certain voices even after years of not hearing them. It was my brother. He didn't see me at first, walked right past, holding hands with a toddler I didn't recognize. His kid, probably. He looked older, not worn down, just smaller. The way people look when they've used up more chances than they admit to. He glanced up and froze. That pause, that split second of recognition, that half-step hesitation. We locked eyes. I didn't get up, didn't wave, didn't react. Just kept my fork in hand and let the silence do what years of explaining never could. His expression shifted. Not guilt, not shame, just uneasy acknowledgement. Like a man seeing the ghost of someone he used to control and realizing the ghost built a city while he stood still. He nodded once, and I nodded back. Not as forgiveness, not as invitation, just recognition of what happened, of what will never happen again. He didn't approach. He turned away. and that was the truest conversation we'd had in over 3 years. That night, I went home, sat on the couch, and didn't replay the scene. Didn't feel anger, didn't feel grief, just clarity. Not everyone gets closure with an apology. Sometimes, closure is knowing you don't flinch when the past walks by. A few weeks after the restaurant incident, I got a knock on my office door. Not a text, not a call, a real knock. The kind that belongs to someone who still respects your time enough to face you. It was my cousin, Lena. We grew up together. She was the only one in the entire family who didn't treat me like a burden after the fallout. Didn't take sides, didn't justify anything. She just disappeared quietly when it all blew up. And now she was back, standing in front of me, holding a coffee tray and looking more nervous than I'd ever seen her. We sat in my office. She didn't waste time. They asked me to talk to you, not to pressure you, just to explain. I didn't interrupt. They know they messed up, your parents, your brother, all of them, but they don't know how to say it, or maybe they think it's too late. She paused, looked me in the eye. They think you're still angry. I smiled, a calm, flat smile. Because I wasn't angry anymore, I was past it. I'm not angry, I'm just done. She nodded, took a breath. They're struggling, Nate, like really struggling. Financially, emotionally. Your mom's been in and out of the hospital, they're falling apart. And they think, maybe if you just came back, things could start to feel normal again. That word again. Normal. As if the family ever was. I asked her one question. Did anyone ever apologize? She looked down at her coffee. No, not really. Just excuses. Guilt. You know how they are. I did. I thanked her for coming. Told her I appreciated the honesty, that I hoped she wasn't caught in the middle, and then I said, tell them I'm not coming back. Not because I'm bitter, not because I want them to suffer, but because I finally built something I don't have to be smaller to fit into. She didn't argue. She just stood, hugged me gently, and whispered, I don't blame you. That was the last time I heard from anyone in that family. No letters, no voicemails, no third-party visits, just peace. Which, for the first time in a decade, felt like something I didn't have to defend. A few nights after Lena visited, I sat in my kitchen with the lights low and my laptop open. Not for work, not for emails, just open. The apartment was quiet. My phone was face down. No music, no background noise. Just me, a blank screen, and a question I'd avoided for too long. What if I was too harsh? Not because I doubted what they did, but because that's what people like us do. We replay the wreckage, wondering if maybe we overreacted to the explosion. Maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe they didn't mean it. Maybe being alone this long means we did something wrong too. So I started writing, not to them, to myself. You were not too harsh. You were honest. You didn't yell. You didn't retaliate. You walked away when no one else had the decency to ask if you were okay. They chose comfort over accountability, repetition over repair, and you chose not to stay where apologies only come when people hit rock bottom. You're not heartless. You love them more than they'll ever admit. But love is not a reason to self-destruct. And forgiveness isn't a subscription service. You didn't go silent because you couldn't speak. You went silent because speaking didn't matter to people who had already made up their minds. You didn't win. You just stopped losing. And you didn't burn the bridge. You just stopped being the only one holding it up. That's not cruelty. That's self-respect. I saved the file. Didn't post it. Didn't print it. Just let it sit there. Proof that I no longer needed anyone else to validate the truth. That night I slept through the night for the first time in years. No dreams, no tension, just quiet. The kind that doesn't feel like absence, but arrival. People assume the hardest part of being betrayed is the moment it happens. The confrontation, the discovery, the punch to the gut when someone you trusted does the one thing they swore they never would. But that's not it. The hardest part is what comes after. It's waking up the next day and realizing you're the only one still hurting, that they've already moved on to new routines, new smiles, new stories where you're either the villain or just erased. And then you're stuck with the echo, the need to defend, the need to explain, the desperate internal fight to be seen as right by people who never cared whether you were. But eventually you stop fighting, not because you gave up, but because you finally understand something they never will. You don't need to be cleared in a court of public opinion to know who you are when it's quiet. I'm not better because I'm successful now. I'm not healed because I drive a better car or sleep on clean sheets. I'm better because I don't flinch when I remember. Because when people ask about my family, I don't feel the urge to soften the edges or justify their behavior. I just say, we don't speak. That's by design. And I leave it at that. If you've ever been cast out for saying this hurts, if you've ever been told to be the bigger person when you were the only person being honest, if you've ever watched everyone turn away and then come back only when they needed something, know this: you're not bitter, you're not broken, you're not dramatic. You just finally realize that survival means drawing a line and not letting anyone drag you back across it. And thanks for reading. Not for sympathy, not for applause, just for listening. Because sometimes the only thing louder than being cut off is being heard at last. Update. A lot of people ask the same thing. How could you just walk away from something that devastating without exploding? How did you not lose your mind? How can you act like you've made peace with what they did? So let me say this as clearly as I can. It did not hurt. It nearly broke me. When I found out my wife, someone I trusted with my life, was sleeping with my brother, I wasn't calm. I didn't walk out like some stoic saint. I shook, I punched a wall, I threw up in my bathroom 3 times, and sat on the floor for 2 hours trying to understand what reality I had just entered. There was no dramatic confrontation, no screaming match, no movie scene, just this slow collapse inside me. As if the version of my life I thought was real was never actually mine to begin with. I didn't forgive them. Not then. Not now. What I did was disconnect. Because there's a point where anger stops burning and just turns to silence. Not peace, just exhaustion. And when everyone around you pretends betrayal is messy but manageable, you learn to stop explaining why it felt like the end of the world. Another question I get. Would you ever talk to your brother again? Number, not out of hate, out of principle. He didn't just betray me. He watched the fallout, watched me lose a home, a marriage, a dog, and still moved in with her. That's not a mistake. That's a man who decided my dignity was worth less than his convenience. And people like that don't change. They just learn to whisper softer next time. Do you miss her? Number, I miss who I thought she was, but that version of her only ever existed in my head, and missing someone who never really showed up for you, that's just a recipe for self-destruction. So, how's life now? Quiet and real. I live alone, and that used to scare me, but now it feels earned. My business is growing. I work with people I trust, slowly and carefully. I go on long walks, I read more. Some weekends I don't speak to anyone. And that's not loneliness anymore, that's freedom. I don't date seriously yet. Not because I'm afraid, but because I'm still learning what it means to let someone in without handing over the keys to my self-worth. But one day, maybe. So no. I didn't take it lightly, it wasn't easy, and I'm not over it in the way movies like to pretend closure works. But I'm here, I'm whole, and most importantly, I didn't become like them, and that's enough for now.